All right, we're recording now.
Right on.
All right, Dale Shackelford, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. And assuming this thing turns out all right, y'all will be watching our first ever remote podcast for Country Drive.
Super excited.
Yeah, man. It was great when I first met you over at Joe's a long time ago. And ever since we had that conversation that day about tornadoes, I was like, I got to get this guy on.
Yeah, tornadoes are great. I forgot about that. I forgot about that conversation.
Well, it left an impact on
being
me.
about tornadoes, that is. I remember, meeting you there. I was like, man, this is really cool. We had a lot of similar ideas, especially about like podcasting and kind of stuff like that. And you were just getting into this, and I'm like, man, this is something I definitely wanted to be a part of. And so, yeah, thank you for the invite, and we've loved becoming friends.
That actually was just before I started my podcast. My uncle was here, and I was starting it in like 2 weeks.
That's right. Yeah. And you came down, brought him, showed him around the studio we were working in at the time. And yeah.
So I got to tell you this funny story real quick, because I was thinking this would be something funny to talk to you about. A guy that I had on the podcast a few weeks ago, he posted something on his Instagram story, and it was someone else's, but I thought it was his, and it had him ranked number 2 on his own Spotify Wrapped. And so I quickly thought, oh, this guy, he's number 2 on his own Wrapped, until I realized he was just reposting someone else's. Give me some artists that you think would be number 1 on their own Spotify Wrapped.
Kanye West.
That was mine.
Kanye West. I could see, honestly, I could see Drake. I could see Drake being like his own like top guy. I don't know about anybody else right off.
I literally thought about this right before we started recording, and I was like, Kanye West has to be number 1.
Oh, you know it.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with loving your own music, but I thought it was Kanye, because Aziz Ansari a long time ago had a joke about going over to Kanye's house and he was listening to his own music.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I really don't. I know a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't listen to your own music, but I don't know. I mean, it depends on why you write, I think. I think it depends on why you're an artist, but I write stuff that I like. That's why I write it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, of course I'm going to listen to my own stuff. I like it. It's what I wanted to hear, It's kind of cheating, but like, I think on my first release, I would like set up my Spotify and just let it run like all night with the volume off. And just on repeat, as like a itty bitty artist, just to get some kind of streams. I wouldn't do that now at this point, but at that point in time, absolutely.
Do they know it's you playing your own music, or do you think so? They don't know.
No, because your consumer account that you listen to and the account that you upload things through, whatever, you have to go through your distributor, right? DistroKid or CD Baby or whatever. Those 2 accounts aren't linked.
Okay.
And so, I mean, if they know, then it's not because they're linked in through the same thing, at least. So, I don't know.
Because I did that when I first started the podcast on YouTube, and then I heard that if you repeat your own podcast, they don't give you the extra view.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know about YouTube.
I have no idea. So you play music also?
I do. Yeah. It's actually how I got into like engineering and everything was through writing.
Are you in a band right now?
I'm not. No.
Okay.
No, I've never actually been in a band. Everything I've done has been solo stuff, with the exception of when I first started college back in Oklahoma. There was a little the college I went to was a 2-year college, and they had a cover band that did events just on campus stuff. And I was a part of that band, I guess. Yeah, and we'd play 80s hits or whatever random stuff we felt like, just for the fun of it and to provide a little extra entertainment for events.
Do you like 80s music?
Who doesn't?
I'm just making sure.
It's great. So like one of the songs I pitched was like "Oh Sherry" by Steve Perry.
Yeah.
I love that song. And I remember going and playing for like a Lions Club meeting that was on campus, because for some reason they met on campus. So there's a bunch of people that would love that era of music and knew the songs. As the first time I performed that song publicly, and I botched it up. I couldn't remember any of the lyrics. So I started making up stuff And I know good and well they're looking at me like, that's not right. That's not right. But yeah, nobody said anything. So
Okay, so growing up, I had
yeah.
a babysitter named Sherry. And
Okay.
so I used to sing it at the top of my lungs to her, but I had no idea what I was saying. And I think the lyrics are, and you have to help me with this,
Well, I'm not the one to
even though
ask. I
apparently
forgot
you
all
don't know
of
the lyrics. But I used to just sing, "Oh Sherry, I'm in love," and then I would say, "Hold on." Is that it?
I I think it's Our Love. I think it's Oh Sherry, Our Love. It's either Holds On or Hold Strong or something like that. But
Ah,
I think it is Holds. I think it's Holds On.
okay. My jam for definitely getting the wrong lyrics is
Mhm.
"Spill the wine, dig that girl."
Spill the wine, dig that girl.
I think it's still "Know Why I Dig That Girl," but I've always sang "Spill the wine, dig that girl."
Hey, we've all got stories about some kind of lyrics we just did not understand.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
eh,
and for years.
well, if you're going to be in a cover band, you better sing the right lyrics.
And I had them memorized leading up to it. I just completely lost it as soon as the song started. And I was doing it as a duet too. So there was another girl singing with me, and she knew the lyrics, I, but I was singing melody, and didn't work out.
How funny. Uh, come a little bit more in frame. There you go.
Awesome.
All right. Awesome. And it's weird. This is our first time using Riverside, and your mouthing is off with the things, but hopefully that comes out fine at the end.
Hope so. Hope
Yeah.
so.
No kidding. Have you ever used Riverside?
I've not. I've seen a lot of the advertisements for it, and seems like a pretty good product. But I've not tested it out myself either. So
Yeah. Well, Riverside, we're talking about you during a podcast, so y'all get this right, please. Speaking of podcasts, all right, before we get too far deep in, I want you to go ahead and promote your podcast, which I enjoy.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So I'm part of Successfully Unsigned. We deal with a lot of new singer songwriters and small bands, local, kind of mostly to the Nashville area, and we're all about helping DIY artists figure out how to get from point A to point B, whether it's in writing their music and talking, going out and networking with people, making connections, to promoting their music, to live shows and you know how you can set up for different aspects of the performance, whether it's your outfit and your clothing, your branding image, stuff like that. And so, we're heavy into just trying to help people know a few of the tips and the tricks of the music industry if they have no experience with it, and stuff that I know that I myself would have really liked to have known, or some of my co-hosts as well, David and Patrick. All of us have talked about, like, man, this is the stuff that we wish we knew when we first started that would really kind of help young artists out. So
And
it's
are
called
you
Successfully Unsigned.
successfully unsigned? Are you enjoying the process?
Oh, absolutely. It's been such a fun process. We've gotten to meet so many just interesting, cool people, interesting, cool artists, hear some great music. And we've done 3 seasons now. So 2.5, 3 years ish. No, we just just started our 3rd year. Halloween was our first episode, I guess, 2 years ago. And it's so much fun because we do artist interviews as well. So we'll bring artists on the show. We'll interview them for about an hour long, usually, and then we also do live in studio performances too, which is kind of the slice that I get to really hone in and really craft. And so we video and record, whether it's singer songwriters or the small bands. We do acoustic forward performances just in whatever random room we have. So makes for a fun challenge and such a fun journey to get to go on.
Yeah, there was a singer that was on y'all's podcast. She has purple hair.
Anastasia Elliott. Yeah. Yeah.
And she was playing like in a dressing room.
So that, yes, well, at least for that day, that was actually her private studio room that she's developed in her house. And she uses that staging area, that little studio area, for photography and also for a lot of her music videos, which she's got excellent music videos, like just off the charts, especially for like an indie artist. They're so creative, so interesting. And she takes this piece of her basement and dresses it in all kinds of different stuff It's been, I think, a spaceship, and it's been a bunch of other things. And so that day was a dressing room. She brought out her outfits from a bunch of her performances and videos, and that became like the setting for the interview and the performance.
Were you inspired to get into podcasting because of other podcasts?
Yes and no. Um, the biggest part was really that the three of us thought that there was a void in content out there for people who really kind of come into the industry not knowing anything about the industry itself and getting that start. Because I'm from Oklahoma, I'm from out of state. Patrick is from out of state as well. David's from here. But when you come here to like the Nashville area, there's this thing, the industry, that is just so different than what you expect. You hear all the stories and of it being one way, and it's in some ways it is, but in a lot of ways it's not. And so finding out that it's a whole new machine you have to learn how to navigate is really difficult. At least it was for me, and I know for a lot of other people. Trying to like conceptualize those ideas in your mind, and so we didn't really see a lot of that kind of information out there, and we wanted to help with that.
Well, the funnest part about podcasting for me is when you think other people are going to get to learn a lot, but you find
Yeah,
out that it's an education for yourself.
absolutely.
So I'm
What?
sure it's been as valuable for you as it has others.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine where I'd be like right now without without having gone through this process. Because yeah, you learn so much about whether it's different challenges you face. You learn a lot about marketing because we market ourselves. Learn a lot about networking because I mean that's part of what we're talking about. But it's also a case study for ourselves and how to do it. How do you get your guests? How do you find the people you want on the show? If it's the live performances, how do you deal with somebody's bedroom or a basement studio that has clothes? How do you find the best way to do that on the engineering side, or all those kind of fun things that not everybody gets to do. And it's so much fun. And every episode's kind of a slightly different challenge, especially when we bring on guests. And so it's kind of like like using Riverside. You got to figure out something
Mm-hmm.
different, to make something to make it work. To the show must go on kind of idea. So
Well,
like
sorry.
I was just going to ask, for your end. I mean, you've had in your podcast kind of a slightly different trajectory in like how you've done things. How has that changed for you? From where you started to where you are now.
Um, it's a good question. I haven't really changed much. I wanted to do a lot more broader stuff, which we have coming up in the future. We've kind of been bouncing around some ideas on talking to different folks, but
Mhm.
we've stayed mostly in the music alley, which is kind of where you end up. And if you're doing mostly in-person interviews in Nashville, that's kind of the pool you have to draw from a lot of the time.
Mhm.
But we have some other ones coming up, and we've had some conversational AI people,
Mhm.
meditation experts, energy healer,
You
uh,
had a poker player this
po-
last time, right?
poker player. Not last time.
Yeah.
That's so. Right now, because of a transfer from one studio to the next, I'm waiting on this RSS feed issue. So that was
Ah,
the last one that was on Spotify. I'm just putting them up on YouTube for now.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I've been listening on Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just had one 2 days ago with the producer Garth Fundus, who produced Keith
Okay.
Whitley and Don Williams, Trisha Yearwood.
Nice. I think I saw some clips on Instagram about that.
Yeah. Do these names
Yeah.
ring a bell to you? Are you in the country
Oh
at
yeah.
all?
Uh, I'm not like the biggest country fan in the world, but oh yeah, I know those. I know those people. I
Well,
mean,
well, I'm always looking to get exposed to new podcasts. So give me your top 5 podcasts out there.
top five. Ooh. Off the top of my head, one of my favorites is Rick Beato's.
Yes.
He has one down there. Is it Stone Mountain, something like that?
In Atlanta.
Yeah, it's just outside of, yeah. That's a great one. There's another local one that's pretty fun. It's called the Nashville Drummers Podcast. I've listened to them a handful of times, and they're fun. Pop Punk Promo is one that's kind of adjacent to us in a lot of ways, except they're kind of more focused on the artist and specifically pop punk. But Patrick, one of my the co-hosts, has interacted and talked with the girl that runs that several times. There's 3, 4, and 5. Well, obviously, being friends with you, I've really enjoyed, watching your stuff and listening to your podcast and the different people that you have on. I'm blanking on any other podcasts at all right now. But there's at least 4 there. So,
Mom, Dale put me in his top 5.
It's true though. I really enjoy your podcast. Like,
Well,
that's
sweet.
part of why I'm so excited to be on it.
Yeah, man, that's sweet of you.
Yeah.
The one thing I like is how much ignorance I have for it compared to all these great thumbnails, great production. And I'm just like, maybe one day if it's monetized, I'd like to do that. But for now, I like it kind of rough and raw. I think podcasting is getting into basically becoming a new form of TV. Okay. Where the production value is highly valued. And I get it, but I like the rawness of conversations. I don't do any editing in my podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people have told me numerous times, like, hey, you got this wrong. You should have cut this part out. And I just think to myself, how fake, do you think I got into this thing to be fake? If I make a mistake, if I say the wrong fact, or if I stutter, I'm not out there trying to make myself look good. I'm just trying to have a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that's kind of the point of the podcast, is to get that behind the scenes. I think you use the word raw, kind of take on it. And so I do all the editing for our podcast, and I do all of mine in post. So we film and multi-track and all that, and then I edit. And I'm kind of like you. I try to take out as little as possible. I don't edit the ums. I don't take out the little breaths and mistakes. If there's like a long extended pause because somebody started looking something up, one of the interviewees or something, it's like, oh, give me a second, I'll cut that out, because nobody wants to sit there for 3.5 minutes of silence because they're like, I don't remember what it's called. I'll cut that, but that's about the extent of it.
When I had Keith Stegall on the podcast, I can clearly remember getting the audio back, and in the first 5 minutes, I must have said like 10 times. And I imagine it's because Keith Stegall is one of my musical heroes. I mean, he is Zach Brown, Alan Jackson, writing songs like Between an Old Memory and Me, Don't Rock the Jukebox. He's everything I needed in music growing up. But I was like, I would cut out the ums. And after the first 5 minutes, I was like, I can't do it anymore. It's not worth my time to try to make myself sound better. I'd rather just put it out. But it was that's what I did also with ums. I was like learning to take out just a quick but then it's like, forget it. That's just how I talk.
It takes so much time. That's one of the learning curves, like on my end, that I found out. I didn't know how much work goes into podcast, into the whole world. I mean, you got editing, but like you mentioned, there's thumbnails. There's, if you're doing clips and reels, what kind of fonts are you going to use? If you're going to do like captions, posting to all the different platforms, that itself is a big thing. That's time consuming.
Yeah. Reels have become a little gross for me. I love doing them. They've kind of rejuvenated my spirit for enjoying podcasts, because it's given me something I can do outside of just getting the one full episode done. But they require editing. Sometimes I have to cut out to get to 90 seconds or 60 seconds. And again, that makes me feel gross.
It does. It's such a grueling task that you don't think about, you think, I'll just clip this and that's done. But all that clipping, every in and out point, you have to like, okay, what am I going to choose to not highlight? What am I going to choose to not share? Because in the long form podcast, I don't know, maybe I don't know if you find this as well, but like I find like, man, there's some great stuff, but it takes 5 or 6 minutes for them to discuss or to lay the stage for whatever the topic is, and you're like, this is so cool, people would love this, but you can't put it in 60 seconds, or you're missing like everything, or it's completely misunderstood, or you're just like, oh man, this would be so cool, but I can't make that into a reel.
100%.
It just doesn't fit.
Yeah. And just this is just us nerding out. I hope people that are listening to this understand, but it is like an inside look into, you don't want to upset your guests by putting out something that takes them out of context, but you also have to use reels to help drive traffic to the full episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad when I'm talking to a guest and I know I've asked them something that people want to know about, and then I feel them drifting, and I'm like, I need this in 90 seconds. I need this in 90 seconds. And they can just see on my face I'm getting antsy.
Yep. Oh man, that's, I've had some conversations with my co-hosts about that for like the episodes where it's just us, talking about that, or even little stuff like, for us, all three of us were really bad when we first started about like messing with the mic. We'd move it, we'd adjust it and move it here, move it there, and everywhere else, and every time you touch it, you start making noise. You hear a boom.
That's
boom,
right.
Or you hit the mic stand, which I unfortunately did a couple times already this episode. You hear dong dong. It's like I
haven't even heard it. I put on this noise reduction thing, so I haven't heard it.
Oh, nice.
My thing that I'm getting into right now, I've been looking into this week because I just love getting into random stuff now for podcasting. Music, conspiracy theories.
Okay.
What you got? Your favorites.
I don't know. Maybe. So you remember when like UMG and TikTok were fighting?
Yeah.
I think some of that might have been staged.
You think?
I don't know that I'd say I believe it, but this, just even in the podcast kind of realm and the people that you talk to, you see this, I'm sure. It's a very small community that are doing a lot of the really cool, stuff and are really active, at least in Nashville. Like you get to start to know people and you're like, oh, well, they know so-and-so and they know so-and-so. Everybody kind of knows each other. And I'm not in the UMG TikTok world. I don't have connections there, but I can't help believe that that's not kind of the same way. And so the idea that maybe some of it was staged to either drive traffic or drive probably money in some sense somehow to the right places. I feel really bad for like the small artists on UMG that lost out on so much because of the squabble. But I think everything comes down to money. So,
well, are they still off of TikTok?
No, they made up.
Okay, but
they made up.
But I have heard that smaller artists are getting squeezed out of Spotify.
Oh yeah. Of course, they set like that threshold limit. Like you have to have so many streams. I forget how many it is to even get paid. You have to have a certain number. Otherwise, and anything that was made below that number, any money that was made below that number gets funneled to larger artists. And I'm like,
wait a second. Artist A, let's just say the cap is 1 million streams.
Sure.
I doubt it's that high, but
it's not that high,
but artist A gets to 900,000 in our example. And artist B gets to 2 million. Artist B would essentially be siphoning off from artist A's income.
If I understand what I've read correctly, yes. Now, I could have misunderstood all the workings of it. And it's certainly a lower number than 1 million. But yeah, there's whatever that cap is. They're like, oh, it's not worth us paying them. It's not worth our time to pay those smaller artists because they have earned so little. Well, it's not really. I love as a consumer. I love Spotify. It's great. It's a great platform as a consumer. Their business practices for artists and users, contributors, is not the best.
Huh. I know nothing about it on the artist side.
Yeah, it's. I mean, what's the current rate? Like 0.002 cents, I think, per stream. It's very, very little. You got to have a lot of streams to make any kind of money.
Well, you used a conspiracy theory that could be very true, but my favorite ones that are being promoted is Stevie Wonder isn't blind.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever seen the videos?
I've heard it talked about, and I maybe have seen one. What do you think about it?
Well, it's simple. If you look at the video, the guy's waving to him from stage, and then they cut to Stevie and he's waving back at him. But there's a woman standing next to him who you can clearly say as they cut to him, hey, he's waving at you.
Okay.
So he waves
Okay.
back. But the way that he gets promoted on Twitter is so funny.
I love Stevie.
Stevie Wonder is the best.
See, I've always wondered, and I know you can, like, I know it's not a function of inability, but it certainly adds difficulty. Like, I've been told he did all the instruments for Superstition.
Probably so.
Drums included, I'm told, is him. And I'm like, man, what do you got to go through, being blind to learn not just piano, which he plays amazingly, but like everything else?
Wait a second. Did you just say he plays the drums?
Yeah. That's what I've been told. Now, somebody could have lied to me. That's entirely possible, and I could have been gullible and believed it. But I was told that he played every instrument on Superstition. You
can't be fully blind and play drums. Well, maybe you can with a lot of takes.
I don't know. That's what I've been told, though.
I'm about to look it up while you're talking. if there's such thing as blind drummers.
Surely somebody, there's got to be. There's got to be.
I don't know, man. Drums is pretty difficult. I can see piano. I can see guitar.
Yeah. Because you can really. I mean, your hands are on it all the time. You can feel that.
You're missing some cymbals if you're blind drumming.
Well,
keep going.
I don't know. Stevie's great though. Like, huge fan of Stevie Wonder. I just called to say I love you. One of the best songs. It's just amazing.
Signed, sealed, delivered, baby.
Oh yeah.
Here we go. All right. No. 4 famous drummers who have oh my God. 4 famous drummers who have overcome disabilities, and on this list is Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. What does it say about him?
Hold on. It's taking me a second to scroll down. Sorry, folks, for the dead air, but here we go. Superstition, Isn't She Lovely, Sir Duke. Stevie Wonder is a household name in music, mainly being known as the blind pianist singer. Stevie is also an amazing drummer. Tracks such as Superstition and Boogie on Reggae Women feature Stevie on the kit. You're right.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Stevie Wonder is a blind drummer. That is fascinating.
Anytime I hear like a song on the radio that's done really well, and I'm told that the headline artist, whoever it is, played all the instruments or played multiple or whatever, especially when it's varying styles, like, okay, guitar and bass, okay. Okay. But when I start hearing like, oh, they went from guitar to drums, or they threw piano in there or whatever, and it made the final track, and it sounds really good. It's not just like kind of halfway done and just like, oh, they played it, but it is. But when it's done really well, my respect for them goes up so much.
Oh my God. Do you know a guy named Ben Rector?
Yes, I've heard the name. I think I've heard a song or two. I know I've heard the name.
Okay, so I don't know much about him, I will admit, but there is a cover that he did of Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody, which I think is one of the greatest songs ever. And I don't know why you would try to compete with Whitney, but if you go on YouTube and look up Ben Rector, I Want to Dance with Somebody, and I hope I have his name right, he plays every instrument on the video. And it's like he's showing how he tracked it, I guess. It's phenomenal.
I'll have to check that out.
I wonder how many other people have like literally played every instrument on their records.
Well, I know one of the first people that I knew about and realized that was going on was Hunter Hayes a number of years ago.
Yeah, the country artist.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the song. It was either his first or second hit that really went anywhere. I can still picture the music video. And to be fair, I'm not really a Hunter Hayes fan. Like, his stuff is fine. It's just not for me. But my sisters really liked him, and so they would play his music and whatever. And I remember in the music video, it showed him playing all the different stuff. And at the time, I was like, nah, he's just, it's just for the video. And then one of them looked it up. They're like, no, he actually played all of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, All right. Good
Yeah,
for him.
I've heard he's a super talented artist. Like when it comes
Mm,
to musician, I should say.
mm.
But if you play all the instruments, it doesn't necessarily give you more credibility, but it is fun to know that you have that level of talent.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It really is, and dedication to it, because that takes so much to learn and relearn how you approach parts. Like I have a little keyboard right in front of me, and when I'm like making demos of my own stuff or trying to write pieces, I'll sometimes play like an organ piece or a piano piece. But even those are so dramatically different in how you have to think about, like, okay, how is this part played? I'm not a pianist, so what I come up with does not sound good. You know, I can play the keys, I can play it in the right key
Yeah.
usually, but it's like it's not there. Not really. It doesn't sound great when I'm the one playing piano or keys on it, because I'm not a pianist. So, and that opened my eyes to, like, yeah, this is more than just knowing the notes. It's knowing how to use them.
Well, I hope that it's a talent that continues along with great musicians and artists, because nowadays, if you're someone who can sing well and you learn guitar, you can do your own demos by programming the drums, programming the bass,
Mm-hmm.
programming piano, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to lose that feel. So we should also mention to people that you are a recording engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
you've, at least for part of your career so far, you've come up under one of the best, Joe West.
Been very, very fortunate to get to work with him for a year and a half now, I think, roughly.
What's happening in the engineering industry with AI?
Ooh. Um, there's a lot of debate going on,
Mm-hmm.
as to whether it should exist there, whether it shouldn't exist there. If it does exist in engineering, how should it be used? What are the ethics, behind how you can use it? Because, like, the first AI stuff I remember hearing about in engineering specifically was software, not even associated with like necessarily professional stuff, but like devocalizers.
Mm-hmm.
Stripping a vocal out of a song to give you just the an instrumental version of it. And those have been around for quite a while. Now they've gotten a lot better. I know the first ones weren't always great. But now they have stem strippers that'll take, a whole song and, like, hey, I'll give you the stems of the guitars, the piano, and the vocals and everything else. And how it's like, how ethical is that to use on something that's not yours? I think sampling's been a thing for a couple decades. I think this is going to really bolster that, and I think you'll see some cool art that comes out of it. But is it yours to use? I do think there's some cool stuff AI wise in, like, the realm of mixing. Of course, a lot of people use like AI for mastering, which is it's a thing, um, and it can do a decent job if you don't know how good mastering can really make your track. Like, if you don't know how much better it can be from having somebody who's really good at mastering do it, then yeah, it makes an improvement, I guess. But it's like, oh, you're settling for something subpar, at least for the moment.
Well, as an up and coming engineer, is it any threat to your career?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is.
I mean, can you replace the engineer with AI?
Tracking engineers? No. Mixing engineers? Mastering engineers? Maybe. Not yet, I don't think. And I think you're going to lose the creativity out of it. You're going to lose, and I don't think you're going to be able to replicate the shining moments that the art really behind it, right? It could make a kick drum sound great, and it could make a bass and a hi-hat, and it can make a guitar and a whatever sound great, I'm sure. And if it can't yet, I'm sure that it will, because that envelope's going to keep getting pushed. But what makes a mix amazing is somebody else's creativity, and their hands being put on the record, and, like, hey, I have an idea. Let's not just make these parts sound like, cool, and let's not just make them sound good, but I have a creative idea. Let me start muting things in different places. Let me start distorting things in weird ways that is not usual. Like Sylvia Massey is one of my favorite engineers as far as like uh, theology is concerned. She worked with like Prince and other people kind of like that. And she's a really big experimentalist. And one of the coolest things that I know that she did was like she printed, I think it was like a drum loop that they had, a drummer played it and they're like, it's cool, but it's missing something sonically, right? The part's there, but the tone's not. And so if I have the story right, she printed that to analog tape, took it outside to a gravel parking lot, threw it down, stomped on it, squished the analog tape into the ground. And so all those little iron shaving fibers that make the analog tape are getting scratched and buffed and pushed around. And they took it back in and re-recorded it into the session. And like, that's what they wanted.
Yeah, AI can't do that.
No, there's no way. I mean, you can't do that with a plugin. That sound is something nobody can replicate. It's utterly random. It's utterly creative and like in every way. Now she's also, I've heard her. I got to listen to her speak one time in person, and she was talking about. She's like, yeah, you can try things, and 9 out of 10 times it's not going to work, but that 10th time, it's going to be exactly what you need.
Well, I've gotten to the point now where, look, I don't want to talk about new age music. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I don't like, but I mean, I'm not a hater in any way. But when I listen to old time records, if I listen to like a Zeppelin or a Jimi Hendrix, it was the performance.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys did not know perfect mic placement for the amps, perfect mic placement for the room. They probably didn't have all of the perfectly diameters or perfectly geometric sides for what are they called, baffles and corner traps. But it was the feel. It was the performance. And I think anything that resonates with me nowadays is still about the performance. And if AI takes all that away, it'll become normal to people, but there will be something lost in translation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same topic and debate as I heard when I was first like starting to learn engineering. I was in a class and they asked us to go align some drums, or it was either that or maybe somebody had brought in a recording of a song, live drummer, right, and it was just off, right, the timing was just not there, and I don't remember how the actual project that was being talked about turned out, but the thought was brought up, when you start time aligning stuff, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's utility. Hey, they just missed it. Okay, let's bring it in. But how much of that ebb and flow is the character of the song? How, if you time align everything to be perfectly on the grid, then why not just use some programmed drums? Why hire a drummer in the first place? Why have that artist, that musician come in and give you a performance if you're just going to strip it away? Right? You go back and listen to Zeppelin stuff. You go back and listen to anything from that era. They're not recording to a metronome. They're not recording to a click track. Everything is like, here's a performance. Okay, let's. If it's not all done live together as a band at once, it's still built time and time. All these overdubs are laid on there, but they're not to click tracks.
Have you seen what they're doing? Sorry, I interrupted your thought.
No.
Have you seen what they're doing with drum plugins, where you can program the perfect beat and then they'll give you the option to click humanize?
I've heard of it. I've not gotten to play with it any.
Okay, but the very fact that they're doing that on some drum plugins tells you that they're saying this is going to be too perfect, and the human ear might want to just recognize it as more human. So why the hell in the first place bring a human in to do it?
Yeah, I understand to an extent. Sometimes getting drummers are expensive. More so than getting the drummers is usually getting the space and the equipment to record drums. That part's the bigger upfront expense, at least. Once you have that, it's not near as bad, financially speaking. So I understand why, buying a $200 plugin once feels way cheaper than, hiring a drummer and buying all the equipment. But you're striving for that same goal, that human aspect.
Yeah, but you're taking the human aspect out of it, and that's the point. And
Yeah.
that's when finance influences art,
Mhm.
it's not art anymore. And I understand there is a business to art. I am not being ignorant of that, and I appreciate that people want to make money off of it.
Mhm.
But if the main concern is saving a little bit of money on a drummer, it just feels gross.
It does. It does. I understand it, but I don't like it either.
It's one of the things I love about Joe's studio is people
Mhm.
are all still in the same room vibing.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that shocked me about his studio, for me personally, was every studio I'd worked in before that was separated. The engineer and the performers are separated behind glass, right? You have a control room and then you have a live room, and that's how a lot of studios are set up. And it's a great way to set up a studio. Nothing wrong with that. But over at Joe's, other than the drummer and maybe like an acoustic guitarist or a utility player or something, everybody's in the same room. And everybody's just right there talking together. Engineers right there next to the bass player, right next to the keys, right next to the electric guitar, right next to whatever else. And there's a totally different vibe about it. I thought when I saw that and I realized that, I thought, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. But after the first session, I was like, I love this because you have that human interaction element.
Yes.
You're just right there. When you're cutting vocals with the lead singer, maybe it's an overdub, maybe it's live, doesn't matter. They're right there next to you. They're 5 feet away from you singing. And you're like, hey, okay, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's inducive to that creativity that you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know if Joe needs the plug because I'm sure he's as busy as possible. But for everyone listening, we're talking about the West Barn / Gasoline Studios. And if you want to record in one of the best recording studios in the world, you have to figure out a way to get in touch with Joe at the West Barn because it is phenomenal. I did my demos there 11 or 12 years ago, and it's still one of the coolest things just having cut a few songs in there.
Yeah. I mean, you walk in and it's just this big room.
It's
you're
huge.
Like, it's so cool.
It's a refurbished barn for people that are listening.
And it's just a lovely space for creativity and
yes,
it's very relaxed.
Yes,
a lot of Nashville studios and a lot of Nashville sessions are very, it's very like it's on the it's very stressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's very high tension. There's money on the line, but it's very go, right? It's very let's go next, and at least my experience over with Joe West has been, I mean, yes, you want to keep the session rolling. Yes, you don't want to, you don't want to stop. You don't want to waste people's time, their effort, their energy, their creativity, their money. You don't want to waste that. But also, hey, what's best for the song? Let's take a step back, and if we need to take a little more time with the song, let's do that. If that's what it needs, let's take another pass. There's not a lot of stress in that environment.
Mm-hmm. And Joe is just so freaking smart.
Mm-hmm.
He's so freaking good. Everyone I know that talks about Joe behind his back just talks about how great he freaking is at what he does.
Yeah, he's very, very good, very talented and skilled.
What do you learn? So you would consider Joe a mentor essentially, on top of working with him?
Yeah.
What are you learning from someone at that level of greatness?
So I can answer that in two parts, two elements. Just right off the bat, I mean, you have the technical side of stuff, and then you have the producing, I guess, side of stuff. So technically speaking, the two things that I learned from him, like immediately when I just first walked in and started getting to work over there, was one, the way he does drums was excellent. I was similar in some regards, coming into like maybe I'll do microphones here and here and here. Like it wasn't a dramatic shift, but that little tiny changes and specs that he does, those little tiny details made a huge difference. And I was like, oh wow, yeah, I need to be doing this. So technically speaking, that, and also technically speaking, I needed to relax. I was so like by the book. I got to do this. Even though I just said that there was little details I missed, but it was also like, hey, put something up, let's make it work. Relax, slow down. Production wise, though, dealing with people, producing is all about people. It's all about how you interact with the people in the room when someone does get stressed, when someone does get a little fidgety because maybe maybe somebody's not playing the part they want the way they want to play it, and they're frustrated because they're like, I should be able to play this, or I keep missing this one place, or maybe there's different creative ideas. How do you deal when there's conflict of who thinks the song should go what direction? And Joe handles that really well, and that was really kind of eye-opening to see his approach to dealing with those kind of situations. Getting to learn the people aspect from him, who is a totally different type of character than a lot of the people I'd worked with in the past.
Anything else exciting happening for you on the recording engineer front right now?
Oh man. Yeah, a handful of things. Well, one, I just recently got off of working on the first major label record that I've been able to be a part of.
Cool.
And that was a lot of fun. It was actually a reference from Joe. Another producer engineer had called him up looking for someone to help out on the record, and he gave him my name, and so I was able to go work for a week over there, and that was a lot of fun. Working with Warner Brothers on a 3-song little set of dates, and a ton of fun there. And then the other thing for me is I'm currently I've actually just put together a mobile rig, because one of the things I want to do is start going to people's houses and say, hey, if you don't have time or money or whatever that looks like, or you just want a different vibe than a studio itself, let's track in your house. Let's track in the place that you're most comfortable. You rehearse here all the time. Let's record here. So I just put together a rig to be able to go set everything down, plug a computer in, and we're up and going. And my first test for that is going to be this next week. I've got a good friend of mine, Quentin Kufal, who is the front man for the band Idol, but also is the drummer for a metal band called Hallison. He'll be coming in to drum for me, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. And so I'm looking to really take on that kind of challenge of like, hey, a house is not set up usually for recording. That's not the purpose. So how do we meet that challenge of acoustics and rooms and different people, all in that?
Well, I was about to ask, how do you handle treatment in that situation? Or do you have mobile treatment?
I don't have mobile treatment at the moment. It's something I've thought about, and some of it'll depend. I'm going to play around with how this next week goes, see how it sounds. But sometimes you can do some creative things with just what's in somebody's house. Pulling out couch cushions, pillows, blankets, stuff out of their closet.
I'm surrounded by moving blankets right now to help dampen some sound in here.
Yeah.
And I've got 2x2s behind the ring light.
Yeah. I mean, that stuff works. It works great. So stuff like that, and then also the other idea is, if you really pay attention to where you place the instruments and the microphones both, you can kind of embrace the sound of the space. Because, that's the purpose. One of the purposes of choosing a particular place to record, right? Why would you choose Joe's studio over a cathedral, over, somebody's bedroom? Part of that is the creative or the sonic identity of that space. That's why people love going to Abbey Roads, right? They want the sound out of Abbey Roads. So embrace the space you're around. Now, you do have to pay attention and make sure, if you got a microphone here, if it travels the wall and comes back, you're not causing phase issues, right? You can look at distances, and you can play with directionality of your microphones, and that can really do a lot. But embrace the space.
Do you think people are excited about the sound of Abbey Road or the history?
Both. At this point, it probably is more about the history.
How many people have gone and recreated the damn album walk? I know a huge country music content creator who went and did it this summer. I'm like, even he's doing it.
It's one of the most iconic images in the history of modern music. So,
yeah.
If I were there, I probably would too, if I'm being honest,
That's another conspiracy theory is Like Robert Johnson, they say the blues artist Robert Johnson,
Oh yeah.
and the story with him going to the crossroads and selling his soul to the devil.
Mm-hmm.
And some people say that that's the same Beatles story when they disappeared to Hamburg.
Is it?
Yeah. Because they came back like the same way Robert Johnson came back, like this whole new musician. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you got to disappear to get great.
Sometimes, take a step back and focus on, your skills, your abilities, your craft. Yeah.
That is the weird thing about nowadays. If you are an artist who starts posting to social media, you're immediately being seen by millions of people, and it can be a good thing. But also, you if you're not in clubs, in front of small crowds, intimate venues, and you're developing that sound and you're developing your ability to be on stage and kind of learn the ropes, you're kind of missing out on the whole pay your dues process, and you might not be ready for a sustainable career.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Like I know there was this girl that was telling me the other day that there's a girl with like 1 million followers on TikTok. And so now she's getting a deal. She's not getting a deal based on how good she is. She's getting a deal based on the fact that she already has a built-in market to.
It's a money game.
Yeah. And it's a little unfair in the sense that if she's not ready for it, they're going to milk that cow for a few years, and then it's probably not going to have anything left.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what kind of, deals they're getting from whether it's labels or whoever, what kind of contracts are they signing, because they're launched into something they know nothing about. Well, how do you cope with that?
Some people think that they're bringing an established market with you gives you leverage in the negotiation. You're not as desperate to sign the contract. You have a good income from social media. And they're really leveraging your relationship with your audience to kind of further that. But I mean, these guys aren't doing stuff that's not worth their time. So I'm sure it's more the labels are selling the creators. Hey, we can take this further for you. We can build this even more. But we're going to have to still get our share.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, my concern with it, and I think you're absolutely right. My concern is kind of going back to the idea of stepping into something that you know nothing about, like for this, like how our podcast does it, but rather than people who are stepping in and don't have a fan base yet. If you come in with a fan base into an industry, what kind of numbers should you be looking at? What's the standard? What is the standard way? Because you can be told, hey, this is normal, this is typical, this is how things are. And it depends on who tells you whether they're telling the truth or not. And that's where I have a little bit of hesitation and fear for these young artists is like, yes, you have a ton of leverage, but do you know that you can use it? Do you know what's normal? Who's in your corner giving you advice? Is it the same hand that's feeding you? Is it the same hand that's, hey, this is normal. We're the ones giving it to you. That's my concern. Is it the only way? I don't know.
Yeah. It's almost like podcasting with some of these people that are developing a following on social media. So we have one coming on soon that's got almost 1 million followers just on Instagram. He does great history stuff. And I've been able to connect with some people that are also country music creators. And they're all building like great audiences. And they're doing it independently. They don't need anybody. And so I hope that many of these people that become big personalities online continue to remain independent, because it can get a little hairy once all the managers and agents start getting involved. And what's amazing about these people is they all do great work. They've seemed to find their own lane on their own, and they don't need an agent and a manager advising them because they've just figured out a way to connect with the audience on their own.
Yeah.
It's the same thing for podcasting. If you can figure it out and you can find an audience to connect with, hopefully you won't, now Sirius is giving $1 billion to a podcaster. Did you know that?
No, I haven't heard about that.
Wait, not $1 billion. I'm sorry. That was so dumb. I think it's 100 million.
Still.
Yeah. Call Her Daddy. I think she just signed with Sirius XM for 100.
I haven't heard about that.
Now,
Wow.
for all the crap I'm talking, I'd sign a contract for $100 million.
Yeah, I think all of us would.
It would be nice, but the question is, are they letting her remain independent? Does she get to make all of her own creative decisions?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. You know, um, so with the podcast I'm a part of, it being called Successfully Unsigned, like that's one of the thoughts we've had is like, who as we've talked and had conversations about who our audience is, one of those is people that are successful and choose to remain unsigned, because there's artists out there that do it, there's historians out there that do it, there's all these kind of different people that can do it. And it begs the question, are labels needed? Are they required anymore? I think different people have different answers. I know I have my opinion about it, but like, if I were to ask you, what do you think? Are labels a necessity?
Okay, so I am grateful to labels for everything they've done in the past, even though I know there has been some real shitty people involved with those labels. Let's just reference one named Diddy.
Yeah.
They made themselves gatekeepers for dreamers, and they take desperate people who are willing to do whatever it takes, and they say they use them up to make them a star because that's what the person wanted. But I do think there have been a lot of value with labels in the past. But in the last year, I've gotten to have a relationship with people like Pam Lewis at PLA Media and Melissa Core over at Dead Horse Branding. And
Both of
really,
those are great episodes, by the way.
I
I was
appreciate
actually
that.
just listening to both of those over again. I'm
But
like,
Melissa
yeah.
and Rick at Dead Horse, and specifically, I have to mention, they are basically what is called integrated marketing communication. They do for an artist. They also work with brands, but for artists in particular, they do music videos, they do press releases, they do management, they do photography. It's almost what you would consider an all-inclusive, all one-stop shop for an artist. So let's just say you're an independent artist that knows how to distribute your own music the way you were referring to, the way you do it earlier. And you didn't want to deal with a label, but you need someone to help you get exposure. Well, if you're booking your own shows and you're posting your own music and you're starting to get traction on YouTube, and you were to partner with a company like Dead Horse Branding, you can take your career from 1 to 100 quite quickly. No label involved.
Yeah. And I think that's a great route to go, honestly. Because what are you looking for? You have your music, you're not at that point in time needing somebody to help you decide, hey, which of these songs, should I cut, should I not cut, right? You don't have that A&R person necessarily if you're already doing well and you already have that mentality and that mind to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you're just looking for someone to help push your song forward, that's as far as getting it out to an audience, to your audience, to a broader audience. Marketing, going like with someone like Dead Horse is a great way.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's not always about just getting your song out. Unfortunately, it's more about getting your name and yourself out there and helping to get your story out there.
That's a whole different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a whole different thing. But whatever it is, there is such thing as before someone really becomes a loyal customer, they have to go through these different phases of learning the product, trying the product, and then becoming a loyal fan of the product. And that all kind of falls under branding.
It does. This is maybe a personal opinion, but I think it's true. But then I'm biased, right? But I think gone are the days that you put out a song and people listen just for the song,
Yeah,
or just for the album. You really are having to sell yourself as an entertainer. You need that brand image. What do you as a person, why are you entertaining? What do you bring to the table? Why should someone listen to you and not the, other 500,000 songs uploaded to Spotify every day?
yeah.
They have options for music. It's no longer just about music, unfortunately.
I think we've seen this with Jelly Roll. I think that Jelly Roll is a guy whose story kind of facilitates the music that you listen to from him. So when you know who Jelly Roll is, his background, and then you listen to his music and his message makes, there's like a relationship there to where you know who he is and the music, and it all kind of ties in together.
Yeah, he's a great example. And going back to Robert Johnson, he's another great example.
Yeah.
Why is he as popular as he is? He's a good musician. Don't get me wrong. Love Robert Johnson. But there's so many guys before him that were just as good or better, and so many guys after him that were just as good and better who never reached the level of fame and stardom he did. And the difference is he sold his story. He crafted something. I think another blues artist, Leadbelly. Are you familiar with him any?
In the pines, in the
Exactly.
pines.
But do you know where he got his name, Leadbelly?
So my buddy Dylan Weldon has told me, he was in prison and he was shot in the stomach.
The story I've read and been told is he shot another man.
Another
he shot
man in the
somebody
stomach.
else.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when he was released from prison and took on, his music career, he was marketed as, come listen to the murderer, come see the murderer,
Right.
perform live. The guy who was sentenced life, or I don't know if he's sentenced life or not. I don't know what his sentence was, but that's how they marketed him.
So I think this man got him out early of prison because Leadbelly used to perform for the warden. That was like
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it, is like the warden fell in love with Leadbelly because he would perform for him and everyone thought he had so much potential. Dale, I know that you are years younger than me, but I have to tell you, just won my heart by knowing who Leadbelly is. I've talked about him 3 or 4 times on the podcast, but
really?
Oh okay. God, yes. So
I haven't heard those references then.
Have you ever listened to him sing? There's like 4 different. Have you ever seen Nirvana's cover of it on the Unplugged album?
Great version.
Phenomenal. But when you listen to Leadbelly's version of it on YouTube, that's the rawest. I mean, it's better than Crossroads. It's one of the best recordings ever to me.
It's amazing. It's purely amazing.
Yeah.
I'm with you there. I mean, yes, I love Nirvana's version. And I grew up listening to bluegrass versions at Picking and Grinnings when I was younger, right? But Leadbelly's it's just, and part of it is his story.
It's the story.
Part of it is this guy killed somebody.
That's right.
And so he's singing about killing somebody over his wife, or over his girl, It's so raw. It's so heartfelt and meant. You're like, ooh, this guy's serious.
I don't quote me on this, but I think he might have killed more than one person.
It wouldn't surprise me. I only know of the one, but
I wish I could remember the guy's name that got him out of jail. But that was, I mean, the whole. But again, like just what we're talking about, the whole history of an artist. And nowadays, like that's another thing that I like about Jelly Roll is it does tell me that some people still have open hearts. Because when you look at some of these stories from the old days, oh man, these guys were not just artists. They were troublemakers. They were tortured souls.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I
mean, Johnny Cash was a tortured soul. The reason Johnny Cash's version of Hurt hit harder for people than even when Trent Reznor does it, it's like you can hear the pain and of his entire life in that song.
Yeah. Oh man, I love the original, but you feel it.
Yeah,
you feel it.
You really do in his voice.
And everybody, whether they know the entirety of it, and I don't, but everybody has an idea of his life story.
Well, it's fun when there's an artist where you might not know their entire story, but you can see it on their face and you can hear it in their voice, the entire life.
Another artist that to me is very much like that. I actually got to go see him this past weekend. His name is Danny, but he goes by Amigo the Devil is his stage name. And he does,
Whoa.
Yeah. I saw that the first time. I'm like, what kind of artist is this? So I clicked on the thumbnail on YouTube and listened to a couple of his songs. But he's a really good storyteller. It's very raw. It's very at times he mixes being direct with lyrical poetry really well. And he has a song called Cocaine and Abel that is amazing. It has nothing directly to do with cocaine or Abel. I don't know where the name comes from. Maybe you can make some insinuations, but it's not directly. He never says those words. But his storytelling in that is just purely amazing. It's all about interest. It's introspective about, do I even like myself as a person? I don't like the things that I've done. My life he's a tortured soul, like you mentioned, and he displays that in his lyrics extremely well. It's a great song.
And what genre?
It's a good question.
I'm looking them up.
It's at times almost like a. Have you ever heard of Darkgrass?
Oh, he's got a banjo.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
He plays solo banjo and sings sometimes, and it's amazing. His lyrics are just he's one of my favorite lyricists right now. He's just really good. But yeah, he's kind of like if you took bluegrass and made it really dark, sonically, lyrically, everything's really dark, like emo bluegrass, and then he's like adjacent to that.
There's such thing as emo bluegrass.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. But his live version, the Bridge City Sessions version of that particular song, is just off the charts. And you talk about seeing it on his face. Maybe not half, but a huge portion of the reason why he's so convincing as an artist and so entertaining, at least to me as an artist and other people I've talked to, is his facial performance, his facial expressions during every performance. You see the crazy when he's giving crazy lines. You see the crazy in his eyes. He's a very talented performer.
Yeah, I'm looking at a picture right now, and when you just said that, I totally see the eyes.
Mm-hmm. And he plays that into part of his character that he's developed. The first time I got to see him live, it was probably the most depressing concert I've ever been to.
Why?
Everything about it was just all of his songs. And it was interesting. I thought it was going to be a full band performance when I went there. Turns out it was him and two other friends of his that are singer-songwriters. And it ended up being like a writer's round at the Basement East, which I did not expect. But I tell you, that was the most moving concert I've ever been to. Like, I'm sitting there with all of these writers, and I'm not one to cry easy, I don't think typically, but I was just about bawling it. Like, I don't know how many of the songs. I'm just like, I've never felt more hurt, but also like so emotionally invested in it. And so also, I wouldn't say happy, but like so entertained all at the same time.
Wow.
It was the weirdest blend. And the other performers were great too. They were really great, but he's my favorite, which is why I went to see him. But
that's interesting. 9 times out of 10, when I get choked up, not cry, but choked up, it's probably music.
It gets you. Some days it just hits.
It just hits.
It just hits.
Even when you've heard it 1,000, it's usually a song that I haven't heard in a decade. It comes on randomly because I'll do these radio channels on Spotify, and they'll feed and I'll start with I'll do like Waylon Jennings radio.
Yeah.
And so they'll start curating for me. And I really like doing that. And then something will come on and just, I've heard it so many times in my life, but just that day, that lyric just knocks me off my feet.
Yep. It's the power of music.
It is the power of music. But now I've got something to check in, and nothing against the emo people. I apologize for my reaction, but I had no idea there was something called emo bluegrass.
To be fair, I don't know if that's a technical genre title. I don't know.
Well, we might have created it today.
That's the best description I know to give, that whole thing. Bridge City Sessions, which is the live version and the first version of that song I mentioned that I saw, has some other sessions that with other artists that are kind of similar. It's interesting. It's interesting.
Okay, so if I'm going to go listen to Amigo the Devil, give me the first 2 songs I have to listen to.
First 2, Cocaine and Abel. And then Hell and You are the two songs. And that second one is just him and a banjo. I would listen to the acoustic versions first if I were you. His band produced stuff is great, but I think he shines in his just stripped back raw production style. And then if you're looking, he does have some shock lyric stuff, some kind of more comedic things. And there's one called Bingo Hall that is a lot of people's favorites. It's kind of a fun little song, especially live. That was a very fun song live.
All right, I got them all three written down here. I'm gonna check them out. I just when you were telling me about him and I pulled up and he had the banjo, I was like, all right, this is gonna be fun.
And like I said, it's not bluegrass, and it's not really even emo bluegrass. It's like adjacent to all of that. It's like you take those sonic sounds but play it differently, and so there's folk elements in it, kind of, but he also rocks out at times. So it's I don't know what you'd call it.
Okay, for people that are just listening and never heard of Amigo the Devil, Dale's done a good job of promoting him, but I want you to hear these song titles: Cocaine and Abel, Quiet as a Rat, Cannibal Within, Murder at the Bingo Hall, Another Man's Grave. So I'm going to have to be in a mood to listen to this.
And if you're not, you'll get in one real quick. Real quick.
Are we talking about being brought down or brought up? Because the way you made it sound with the songwriters around, you went down.
Oh yeah,
but in a good way.
Oh yeah. Oh, the best way. I've never that first song is so introspective, and that's a song that I can be rocking out to the happiest music ever, and the minute it comes on, I'm listening to it, and I'm gonna get all depressed all over again, with just that one song.
When I was your age, this is who did this for me, Evanescence.
Oh yeah.
Like I listened to Amy Lee sing "My Immortal," and I'm like, I guess you can feel happy when you're depressed.
You feel depressed, but you feel whole at the same time,
right?
Yeah,
it's weird.
Have you ever noticed in that there's like this sound in the background?
Oh yeah. At the very end, you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, I think it's throughout the song, but at the very end, you hear it very clearly. So tell me the story behind that.
So it's another music conspiracy, right? When I first heard it, I was like, "That's Morse code. It's got to be. That's got to be like a secret message in Morse code." And so I dug into it, and turns out it was actually just electrical interference. That was on some of the cables, and they decided to keep it.
Man, Dale, I can't believe you realized about that little frequency sound, because I've always noticed it, and I've never known what the hell it was.
Well, I heard it, and I was just like, it sounded to me just like somebody like tapping like an old like telegraph.
Yeah.
Like I was like, what is it saying? I don't know Morse code. And so I looked it up, and everybody else online that I found was like, it sounds like Morse code, but like they couldn't decipher it. They couldn't figure out what it was. They were like, well, they could be saying this, but that doesn't make any sense. And if you take this, well, that doesn't make any sense. And finally I found an article that was talking about like, they interviewed whoever engineered it, I guess. And that was the story that they came out with, it was just a random noise that they thought, it's kind of cool. Let's leave it.
Yeah, I usually don't get crazy into what like the kind of sound of bands like Evanescence, but for Evanescence, they had me. I used to get on the Versa Climber, and I would just listen to that whole album, and you can't sit on a Versa Climber that long, but I would just jump over to the elliptical and back on the Versa, and you listen to that or Linkin Park, you can work out for hours.
Yeah. Put Numb on.
Oh my God.
As a workout song.
Why? And it's so sad that Chester killed himself.
Yeah, it is.
The alt-rock,
really is.
The alt-rock genre, man, it's no bueno. A lot of suicides.
Well, it's a very, I mean, it deals with a lot of the negative emotions of society. A lot of the people that wrote it were people that really felt that way.
Yeah. Is that your lane? Are you a hard rock fan?
I was at one point, like that was my thing. Like I listened to so much of that, and I still listen to some. I do a lot of like R&B and jazz now.
Oh yes,
like live tracked R&B, live band stuff. I mean, so like Daniel Caesar is one of my absolute favorites right now. Leon Bridges is great. He kind of has like a throwback, like Motown kind of sound.
Yeah.
Now on the rock side, one of my favorite current artists making new stuff is Maggie Lindemann. She kind of does this. It's like dark pop and alt rock. It's pop punk or pop rock. It's in that vein, but it's like if you took Billie Eilish and Hayley Williams and like met those in the middle. It's like the Billie Eilish type of pop, but with more punk and more rock involved. And she's got some great stuff, some just great stuff. Especially off her sophomore album, Sucker Punch. Some great tunes on that album.
So you're deep into R&B.
I don't know. I'd say I'm deep into it, but I certainly I listen to the same. I'm slightly embarrassed about my Spotify Wrapped. Slightly embarrassed.
Oh God, let's get your Spotify Wrapped.
It's the exact same for 2 years in a row.
Oh wow, you have a lane.
I haven't changed this. And when I say exact same, I mean the exact same artists and the exact same songs.
2 years in a row?
Pretty much. I mean, they're slightly different order, but my two there's one album and there's one EP that I have not put down for 2 years, and one is Daniel Caesar, his most recent album. And it's funny, I don't remember the name of the album, but I've listened to it I don't know how many times. The name doesn't stick in my head, but it's his most recent album. It's got a blue album artwork for it.
I'll put it up on screen if I get it in post.
Okay, yeah. At his bonus edition, he goes back and recuts a couple tracks, one with Summer Walker and one with Rick Ross, and the whole album is really good. His song "Cool" is what hooked me on that. "Cool" and "Let Me Go." Anyway, but that whole album, I think there's all of maybe one song that I usually skip. That's it, off of like 14, 15 songs, something like that. And then the other album is a jazz album by Melody Gardot. Are you familiar with her, any?
No.
So she's, I believe, Italian, or sorry, not Italian, French. And she does like orchestral jazz. But this particular EP is a stripped down version of all of that, and is it's her, a piano, a violin, and a cello, and that's it. And it's only like 4 songs long, but I think 3 of those 4 were in my top 5 songs for like the last 2 years.
Wow.
And I can't put it down. It's her EP Entre et Deux, if I'm saying that right. I don't know. I don't speak French. But it's the Paris Sessions EP, and it's amazing. The songs are amazing. The performances are amazing. The engineering on it is stellar. It's very raw. And like you can at times hear like the people's breaths as they're playing, not in a distracting way, but in a way that's like, oh, I'm right here with them. You know, very smooth, soft stuff. So good. So good.
Have you ever been to Fame Studios in Gulf Shores, in Muscle Shoals, Alabama?
No, I would like to go.
I got to get a tour recently with my friend Jim McBride and Dylan. It's where Otis Redding recorded in there, who he's my number one in R&B for sure. Soul R&B.
Yeah.
You Left the Water Running. It's where Dwayne Allman and Wilson Pickett did Hey Jude. It's where Aretha Franklin's career took off. The history in that room is phenomenal in the soul and R&B space, and rock and Southern rock for that matter.
I mean, you go there for a sound.
Honestly, I would debate you on that a little bit because it's probably not up to speed with like all the studios nowadays. You go there for the spirit.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything that comes out of there today now. I think Turnpike Troubadours recorded there. I think Shooter Jennings did that album. So there's a lot of people still recording there. Not Jason Isbell records there.
Ooh, Jason's great.
Yeah. You know, that's where he's from, in that area.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they got his stuff all over the wall there. So
his song "If We Were Vampires" is amazing.
Yeah. So I'm not knocking, like it's just an older studio. But you can tell when you're in a room like that, instead of like being amazed by like the state of the art room, you're more amazed by just this feel of like the memories that exist in that place. Like when I think about Otis Redding recording in there, it makes me emotional. Like this is where he created You Left the Water Running.
Yeah.
You know, Dwayne Allman didn't go to lunch because Wilson Pickett wasn't going to go because he was black. Everyone had left to go to lunch. And Wilson Pickett, back in those days, couldn't go because he was black. And Dwayne Allman famously said that they hated long hair hippies more than they hated black people in the South. And so he couldn't go either. And that is what made them sit down and just start jamming out and record Hey Jude.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Racism,
that.
racism and prejudice gave us Hey Jude.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's what, some of the stories you were telling earlier.
Yeah.
I love all the stories that go into the moments of music.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
I'm
what
sure,
makes it.
and I hope that everyone that comes on your podcast understands like what's ahead for them. Cause I like that you do independent artists. I like that you do artists that maybe people haven't heard of yet. It's good for them to get the exposure, but back to what we were talking about with the AI, I hope all these people embrace the art and the humanity and the connection that exists in music. And they're not all looking for a quick buck and save $10 on this and that by just grabbing a plug-in.
Yeah, I really hope that uh, isn't what's in store for the future music. My hope, I'd like to believe in humanity a little bit. I'd like to believe that as artists and as the whole music industry currently shifts towards using AI all the time, that at a certain point people will come back out of that and say, hey, we're missing something.
I think they will.
I really hope so.
I think they will. I've told people this over and over, and I'm sorry I've talked about it on the podcast numerous times now, but if someone releases a voice memo, this happened not too long ago. A country artist released a voice memo song, literally just him and his guitar, and he put it out on YouTube. And he said this a voice memo, and it was "Take Me Back to Carolina," I think was the title of it. I think his name was Dylan Marlowe. Now, no disrespect to Dylan, I don't know much of his music. No, Cameron Marlowe. Forgive me. I think it's Cameron Marlowe. Anyway, I don't know much about his music, but this guy released this, and it was the song "Take Me Back to Carolina," and I thought it was the most beautiful thing ever, because I was just getting a real non-filtered voice, a real performance.
Yep.
And I don't know. It's like nowadays I'm more hungry for authenticity than I am the greatest perfect sounding song.
Yeah.
So I hope we'll get there.
I'm with you on that.
Dale, I have to tell you something, buddy. I had all these things down here and we ended up just going pretty much full-time music, which made it even better for me.
Love that.
What else is going on with you? What else do you want to get out there?
Oh, well, I mean, for me right now, I'm just I'm doing all freelance stuff. So, every chance I get on a new project, I absolutely love it. I was doing some mixing for an artist here right before this. In fact, I haven't printed the mix yet. I still have Pro Tools open on a different tab. Just doing everything that I can, trying to do and be a part of interesting projects, which is part of why I want to do the whole going to and recording in people's houses concept. Doing some video work along with it, just like having some fun and making something that's interesting, something that you wouldn't maybe get, if you did, well, you wouldn't get it if you did it a different way. And I want to open up that new, another avenue that people have done before, but isn't super popular at the moment.
Yeah.
Get back into doing something like that.
Well, how can people find you? Socials? I'll put them up after if I can. I don't know how I'm going to be able to edit this by going in iMovie, but just by telling them at least, people that want to get in touch with you, Successfully Unsigned. What are you Dale Shack on socials or Dale Shackelford?
Dale Shack Official. That's what you can find me under. Dale SHACK. Dale Shack Official on social media. You can find me both on Instagram and Facebook. And I have a TikTok, but I haven't logged in a while. I will probably be getting back on that soon to promote a few things and to kind of have some more fun. But you can also find the podcast at Successfully_Unsigned on Instagram. Unsigned Podcast on TikTok. You can also find us online at su-podcast.com.
Okay, great. Now, I don't know if you know this, but TikTok might not be a thing after January 19th.
Okay, I've heard that something was happening. I've not kept up with it.
Yeah,
I was taking a bit of a social media break earlier this year, and that's the one I haven't gotten back into yet.
Yeah.
So what's going on with that?
All I know is they're looking for a buyer, but the people that I know that are in the content creation, and it is basically their entire income, they're all waiting on pins and needles to see what happens on January 19th. They're either going to find a buyer, it's a day before Trump takes office. So it's kind of an interesting political landscape. The scary thing is Trump gets to put the blame on whatever happened. And, it happened before I took office, so it's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the Democrats are doing about it right now. They don't seem too concerned with it. I think they're the ones that have pushed for ending it on January 19th. And I think the whole thing basically is they need a buyer. And I guess they're going to vet a buyer. It's really a BS conversation. They don't take anything else from that Instagram or Facebook or Twitter doesn't get from us already when it comes to data.
Yeah. Are they looking for a U.S. buyer? Is that the hang up?
I believe so. And I believe Sunday I was walking out the door, but they were about to interview a guy who was seriously thinking about buying it. But it just doesn't make sense. There is a TikTok US, and if he buys it, it's still TikTok.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know enough about the situation to have a real opinion.
I don't either. I just know that everyone that I know that's in that space is extremely concerned. I started a TikTok 3 months ago. It just passed 1,000 followers. So it's of no concern to me what happens to it.
Sure.
But I do hate it for creators that are using it as an avenue, especially with, people that you probably know very well are using it as an avenue to get their music out. So I hope they don't lose that ability.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, it's an app that you can sit and scroll on for hours, and I think probably all of us have at some point. But it's a great app to promote yourself because unlike Instagram and Instagram to an extent, I guess, but unlike Instagram and unlike Facebook, it's all about people that don't know you. I mean, it's all about getting sure your followers might see your stuff, more than people who don't, but it's really wide open like that. And for that, I think it's a wonderful thing. And honestly, in some ways, I think it's slightly replacing some of the space of live shows as far as building your audience. I think a live show still does a better job, but I think it's creeping into that space.
Have you ever done TikTok lives?
Done, I believe, one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My friends do them. They do like a radio show, and they're very good.
Nice.
They just play music the whole time, and people make requests.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. That wasn't on my bingo card for this year.
It's a thing. Radio shows playing music and people making requests, and they have, dozens or hundreds of people in there. And so it's pretty fun.
Now, we did last year for the podcast, we did a Christmas live stream, and we invited artists on. They performed live, had, I forget, 4 or 5 cameras set up that I was switching between, mixing, both for a small in-house PA system for the people that were in person, mixing for the stream, and also doing like a kind of like a late night show kind of host section. So we had hosts set up on one area, artists in another, and we'd go back and forth. And that was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, all right, brother. Well, listen, man, we've done an hour and a half. I don't want to keep you anymore. We're going to have you back on. So
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I hope so, man. I hope I haven't taken up your time.
No, absolutely love it, and hope to have you on Successfully Unsigned too.
I'd love to come on there and hang out with you guys. Y'all always look like y'all are having fun, and we appreciate it because you have been the first remote podcast.
Right on.
Now we just have to cross our fingers that audio and video comes out good, and we'll have this out soon.
Can't wait.
All right, y'all. We're done. Thank you so much, brother. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you, Dale.